What is up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones. Probably pretty easily tell where AJ's at right now in the KFC Yum Center, which might be the best arena name in the world, to be honest with you.
The key is when you type it to make sure you have the exclamation mark after Yum.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is my favorite place to cover a game.
Beautiful looking arena. Carolina needs something like that, not to go off on a tangent.
It's a great arena. It's a great environment. These people know basketball. They're all liquored up, so the velocity goes up as the game goes on. It's a cool town. The arena is right almost on the water, right next to the road that goes on the bridge in Indiana. So there's so many things. There's nothing to not like about it here.
Did somebody? I was watching the game. Somebody said it kind of looked like PNC. Does it have a PNC vibe to it a little bit, or not really?
Well, the PNC vibe. R.L. Bottom was sitting next to me, and I said, there's an element of NC State fan with these people. The crazy.
A lot of fans know what we're talking about. Yeah.
The drunkenness, the craziness, that kind of thing. The pleasantries that they holler at.
Hostility.
And I do not have a problem with that.
No, it's great.
That's why I've always thought, State's a great way. Carolina goes to State, or when I would cover Duke at State or something like that, it was just awesome environment because the hatred that you need to have in college sports was there. Louisville develops a hatred for anybody that's in their building, especially when the alcohol flows.
Yeah.
This is they call it Bourbon City, man. This is a booze town. You cannot walk around anywhere downtown without having bourbon shoved in your face, basically. So
sounds pretty nice.
But it's great. It's a great environment. It's the ACC needs Louisville to get back and be what it should be and what it's always been for the most part. They need North Carolina to get back and be what it should be and what it's always been for the most part. North Carolina hasn't been that a lot. In fact, there's a really good chance that if you include the COVID year when they're really should have, if there was an NCAA tournament, Carolina missed it. This will be 3 out of 6 years North Carolina misses the NCAA tournament. North Carolina basketball is not what it once was. And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, you're absolutely
right. I
right.
won't leave it at that because we're going to discuss a lot of it.
Yeah,
I was going to add one more prong to it, and I thought, and just pull back on that one right now.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, though. It's kind of culminated against tonight, 83-70 loss to Louisville in the KFC Yum Center, like we mentioned. I think you're absolutely right. Talking about the state of Carolina basketball is not a great spot right now. I think it kind of goes without saying. But, AJ, talk to me about why Carolina, again, I didn't even say again, talk to me about why Carolina is such a poor defensive team.
Well, they will tell you when you ask them about their struggles defensively, and it is in every aspect of playing defense, they will tell you because they don't communicate. Now, I was on the baseline tonight. Another thing I like about coming here is they stick you around the court. I can't hear them. I could hear Louisville communicating. When Carolina had the ball on my end of the court, I could never hear Carolina communicating. You saw it on the very first possession of the game where Louisville had a pass right into the lane, right down to the block for an easy basket. And Ian Jackson, there was no communication that there was somebody cutting and someone been beaten. Ian Jackson was totally unaware. The ball comes by him, and he just kind of leans over. I'm not singling out Ian. I'm just making a point here because the communication to me shows that they're just not sparking on defense. So when they're not sparking, a guy lunges for the ball or kind of reaches instead it goes and gets it. When they're not sparking, that means that the rotations defensively are slow. How many times did Louisville just get to the rim?
Oh, yeah.
It's just, it will. I tweeted early on, there were 5 straight possessions, I think. They got to the rim with ease. Now, shame on them for not converting more. Louisville should have won this game by 25 points.
Yeah.
Shame on them for not doing that. So they were getting what they wanted. When they went at the basket, they got to the basket. Carolina fouled with, 3 guys fouled, 3 players fouled out, I think. A lot of fouls in the second half. So they don't communicate. They don't switch well. They don't switch hard. They don't bother fighting through screens for the most part. They go under them when they do too often, and there's a bit of a softness there in how they deal with screens. They don't handle the physicality like they should. The bigs don't get down and low and push other bigs off the blocks. They don't challenge stuff at the rim. A lot of the things that people said was going to be a problem before the season, and I was always in a wait and see mode. Let's just see what they are.
Yeah.
And we're hearing from behind the scenes that they think Jay Wash is going to explode and he's going to be a rim protector and all that. It's just not the case.
No.
So they're poor on the ball. They don't communicate. They don't switch well. They don't handle being screened well. They don't rotate well. They get a lot of steals because they're athletic and they're bouncy, and I think they have good instinctive players that anticipate well and get a lot of their steals. But they don't, in a more conventional half-court setting, they don't get a lot of hands on the ball. So chest passes into the lane, and there's no hands. And there was a lot of that was nowhere to be seen tonight. And they're not very good defensively. Their best defensive player has been out for 2 games now. And I think I would be surprised if Seth Trimble plays against Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
He's here, which was a good sign that he got on a plane and flew. But they need him. Yeah, they need him. People are, well, who are you going to put on the bench? We'll have that conversation maybe some other time. But they missed his spark tonight defensively. He can give them that. He's a guy that can be a difference maker on a play here and there, which in a game that's 1 point with 3:49 left at the last TV timeout, that could be the difference. But they wilted down the stretch against Florida with him on the floor. They did it at Kansas with him on the floor. They did it tonight without him on the floor. I think that 14 games in, we're seeing that this team continues to make the same defensive mistakes, and we'll get on other aspects of the game, but I don't see them getting better. They have not gotten better defensively. In fact, I think in some ways they've gotten worse.
Yeah, and I mean, if you can't communicate, I don't really know what you expect. I mean, it's funny that you say communication because we've talked about it, but it just seems like such a rec league thing. Why I say that is because I remember I grew up playing sports, grew up playing soccer, basketball, baseball, and communication was something that was just drilled into you. Like, you stop practice as a 10-year-old and be like, you guys have to talk defensively. So when a team full of, at this point in college athletics, high-paid, basketball players don't communicate it, that's a very worrying thing for a number of different reasons, but it just seems like such a basic thing that you should be doing at any level of basketball, much less the highest level of basketball you can essentially play in college. I don't know.
Well, you had teammates, as I did, mm-hmm. that weren't great on court or on field communicators.
Yeah, some people just don't say much. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I played basketball in high school, and I went to some good camps, it was always the talking you did on defense is if there was a screen coming. Like, that was built in. Yeah,
you just had to, yeah.
And you had to make sure your teammate heard you. Now, it's loud in there tonight.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But I've been courtside where it's not loud. I remember the Memphis game, Jay Wash was communicating. And I remember telling you in the 3 things after, I said, he was louder than I heard Armando last year. I haven't heard Jay Wash since the Memphis game. I literally have not heard him on the floor. And I'm not criticizing him, just pointing it out. I think that if it's not your nature, then it's not your nature. You can't teach someone to be vocal. You can teach them to be vocal a little bit, but it has to come from within. So much of when you're on the floor or on the field, whatever it is you're doing, or on the ice, whatever it is, so much of your leadership intangibles, your vocal intangibles, those things all come from within because they're innate. Those were probably the same guys who, if they had a science project to do in 8th grade and it was a group of 4 kids, they probably led the project.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then the ones that aren't quiet didn't lead the project. I just think they have a lot of guys in this team that didn't lead the project. Mm-hmm. And Hubert told us in October, this is a quiet team. I'll tell you one thing. In 29 years of doing this for a living, I will tell you right now, whenever a coach says his team is quiet ever again, then I'll say, okay, red flag.
Yeah, massive. Yeah, massive red flag.
I don't think that they really have leaders, and it's not a criticism. It's just it has to be. That's kind of stuff's innate. I don't think I think the composition of the roster is flawed in so many ways, and one of those ways is that you don't have the Cormac Ryan or Harrison Barnes, 2 guys that if you screw up and you don't rotate or you don't call a switch, and you go in the locker room after the game, you have to face them.
Yeah.
You want leaders on your team that can police the room and you want other guys to not want to have to answer to them. I said hello to Tyler Hansbrough, did radio tonight, and I was looked over at him during the game when RL and I were talking about how quiet the team was on the floor. It's like, that guy wasn't quiet. That guy was the type of dude that when you walked in the locker room, if you didn't give it your all, you had to sit in there with him sitting staring at you, burning a hole through you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's nobody in that room that stares at anybody burning a hole through them. And because of that, the head coach has to be a leader. But I think it's hard for head coaches to be leaders. I think it's hard for this head coach to be a leader because he's so uber focused on the minute a lot of the time that, leadership, I don't know. I'm probably going to go the wrong direction here with this, but I don't think 4 years in, Hubert has shown that he's one of those head coaches that can lead for a long stretch of time. Very few can. Mm-hmm. Roy did for a while in 2006, and then David Noel took over. Mm-hmm. I've seen at times coaches do that, but I'm not sure Hubert's there yet. He's only in his fourth year, and it doesn't matter what his basketball experience is. There's a lot of stuff going through his mind. He's looking out on the court, and his team they're terrible screening offensively. They're the worst screening offensive team I've ever seen in my life in college basketball. And I mean that sincerely.
Yeah.
We were asking questions about it tonight. He didn't want to get into it, but I asked RJ about why you had almost all your points in the last 4 minutes of the first half. What were they doing? And he's not saying it, but he's hinting that it's hard coming off screens because they're not really there. So you don't gain that advantage that a screen's supposed to give you, so guys are always with them. So it just makes it so frustratingly difficult for them. They're a bad screening team. They're bad at coming off screens. Sometimes they don't even screen. There was one sequence, I know we were talking about defense here, but I know one sequence tonight right in front of us, probably about 8 minutes left in the game, maybe less than that, where to Hubert's credit, he was running a lot of sets. He was trying to get Ian shots, trying to get RJ shots. And there was a possession where Jay-Witt was at the 4 because Lubin was on the floor. And he set a screen over here, went over there and set a screen, came back, and he was going to set a third screen. And I think it was Ian was supposed to come near the baseline and run off a screen and pop out for something on the left wing, and he didn't do it. And Jay-Witt just kind of does this. And then the whole play broke down. I think it ended up with Drake taking a shot. So they're not always committed to it. When they run the set plays, there were a couple other times where the sets clearly broke up very quickly. So it's just a lot of bad stuff. There's a lot of talent on this team, but do you like pancakes?
Yeah, I'm more of a waffle guy, but I do like pancakes.
Okay, you like waffles. You like salad?
Yeah.
You salad guy? Okay. You like pasta?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you like cereal?
Yeah, not a massive cereal guy, but I like cereal.
Okay, so those are all 4 great things that are wonderful things people like. You don't want to put them all together.
No.
I think that's what we're seeing, if that makes sense.
Good analogy. No, it's a good analogy. I completely understand what you mean. And talking about poor sets and bad screening and just bad outfits, we saw it again. We saw it rear its ugly head not only throughout this game, but again, this was a game that was a 1-point game with 5:09 left. Carolina had the opportunity to come in there and win it, and it was just dribbling. It was dribble basketball. AJ, we've talked about it. I've sat there and watched Carolina and almost like, I don't want to say mocked them in my head, but I'm kind of watching them in my head. I'm just like dribble, screen, kind of dribble.
Well, especially when Ian gets the ball.
Yeah,
I mean, Ian's just like, I'm going to show you my drive bag, and that's what.
Yeah, and I mean, he's looked good offensively at times, but he's a true freshman, and he shouldn't be having to carry the load at times. And he's not great defensively, like we've talked about. But not to focus on him, but 76-9, 5:09 left. UNC doesn't hit another field goal, scores 1 point, 83-70, and it reminded me in ways of the UCLA game. And what I mean by that is, I talked to you after the UCLA game, or maybe I tweeted out, I think I mentioned both, where I'm like, I don't really know how Carolina won that game, but they won that game. This was one of those situations where I didn't really know why and how Carolina was in this game, but somehow down the stretch, they're in this game. And I think ultimately the result was more of what it should have been. You mentioned earlier how Louisville, if played better, could have probably won this game by 20 plus points. It felt like that down the stretch, but I don't think Louisville was a great team, and they allowed Carolina to stick around. And credit to Carolina because they made plays and were able to keep it close. But man, I mean, that's AJ. I'm going to use the word. This is my keyword, unfortunately, for the basketball team this year, man. It was stinky again down the stretch. And to score 1 point with 5 minutes, it's just, I don't know, man. It almost seems harder to do that than to score more points, if that makes sense.
Are we segueing into the second?
It's just typical of this team.
Are we segueing into the second thing?
Yeah, this is the second thing, man. It's just another collapse late, another time where Carolina had an opportunity to win it, AJ. They did.
I'm going to read
but
some.
They fell off a cliff, completely fell off a cliff, and they ended up losing by 13.
It's just everybody, but
it's just brutal.
This is in the bottom of how it happened. The final segment, final 3:49 of the game. Louisville 13-1 scoring. Carolina, by the way, did not score from the field over the last 5:09 of the game. Carolina was 0 for 4 with a missed layup and a missed dunk in that span. The Tar Heels were whistled for 4 fouls over the last 3:46, and they weren't trying to foul. In that segment, in that final segment, now let this sink in. Carolina had a shot clock violation, an air ball, a missed dunk, and a backcourt violation.
Stinky.
And to top it off, they were out-rebounded 6-0.
Stinky basketball, AJ. I mean, that's just what this team is.
Stinky. I think that final segment, stinky is a kind description. That was
atrocious.
and I think that I don't think that they say that, for example, Drake Powell said tonight that they don't know how to raise their intensity level for that final stretch, which I thought was a pretty astute thing for a freshman to say. He's a very bright kid. And I got that because look at what happened at Kansas, offensive rebounds. Look what happened Florida, offensive rebounds. Look what happened tonight, offensive rebounds. And not only are they getting them, but they're scoring. The boxing out isn't there. There's so many. You have to be tough. Roy used to talk about how you have to be tough. You have to have the right toughness to make a big shot.
Yeah.
You have to have the right toughness. For example, consecutive possessions when Lubin shot the air ball and then had the backcourt violation, passed the ball to RJ. On both those possessions, Lubin had exhausted his dribble and stood there trying something, and there were 3 guards on the floor, and none of the 3 guards went to go get the ball. That's another thing I learned when I was in 6th grade at basketball camp. And in high school, it was obvious. If you're a guard and the big gets tied up, you go get the ball. He can hand you the ball. It's not against the rules. And they didn't do that. So everything was off in the last 3:49, really 5 minutes of the game, but 3:49. They did everything wrong. And I asked Hubert about it, and he kind of said the same thing. They got to fix it. And the Drake said they have to be more intense. They have to be more focused because Louisville clearly picked up its intensity. And if both teams, it was 70-69. Ian had that conventional 3-point play, and you could see where Carolina may be right here and Louisville was a little bit right here. Like Carolina was in position with a couple of lockdowns, grab the rebound, and get some good looks on the other end to take control of the game. Didn't do it, and everything that could possibly go wrong in the last 4.5 minutes, for the last 3 minutes and 49 seconds or whatever it was of a basketball game, did go wrong. They were just really bad in that stretch, and we're starting to learn that this is who they are.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, I said it after the game. We're 14 games in at this point, and unfortunately, if you're a Carolina fan, I hate to say it, but this team's just not very good. And there's a lot of reasons why they're not very good. It's an oversimplification to say they're not very good. That's not great analysis. We've talked many a times, not only in this video, going back, podcasts, and other 3 things we've done, daily drops about why this team struggles and why they're not very good. But the fact of the matter is, AJ, is they're just not very good. And this is the situation they find themselves in. And I told people, I said, strap in, guys, because I think you're going to see many, many more games like this over the next couple months. And this segues into the last thing we're going to talk about, what this means. This is who this team is. Yeah. I think this is what a majority of ACC play is going to be like, not only on the road, but I think in the Smith Center too, because we've seen it at times this year already. And I think this team is just going to have to – I agree with you. I don't really see them getting better defensively. if you can't even communicate, that is a thing that in theory could easily be fixed. But when you don't have the personalities to do that, then it's not going to be fixed. And bigs have not performed. They've been a massive letdown and disappointment this year. Jalen Washington, Jalen Withers, not to pick on guys, but I expected them to play better than they have this year, especially over the last month or so. And the guard play. I know Trimble's a miss. Maybe when he comes back, that gives him a little bit of a boost. But I don't know, man. If you're not a great offensive team and you also don't play defense, probably going to lose a lot of games, aren't you, AJ? Am I saying anything crazy right here? I don't know. Maybe I am. I don't know.
No matter how nice your car is, if you don't have any gas in it, it's not going.
It ain't going to go, man. It ain't going to go.
They've got a lot of nice parts. The composition of the roster is messed up, like I said. Elliot Cadeau is not playing well. His body language is really bad tonight. And he's struggling. And I feel for the kid because he's struggling. And when you're the point guard at North Carolina and you're struggling, that's like being the quarterback at Ohio State if you're struggling. Yeah. It's a stressful thing, and he's working through it. At times, I see the increased toughness in him, and at times I see careless passes, and I see body language that is concerning. If you're a coach or someone who observes a team, or if you're a fan, it should be very concerning because he's halfway through a sophomore year now, and some of that shouldn't be the case. I think most of it you just chalk up to struggles. I asked RJ about the level of frustration tonight about just being not just the focal point of other teams, but the other stuff, because he doesn't get a good screen to pop off.
No.
We got him last year. Mm-hmm. Armando is how many times did David Sisk in his film review do stuff about what a great screener Armando was?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How many of those jumpers came off those screens? How many have come this year? Clean, crisp, catch, shoot, uncontested, no closeout threes. Not many.
No.
So people, RJ struggling. Well, it's a team game. Mm-hmm. What this means is I think that the stuff that they don't do well are not things because they don't have the right talent for it or they don't have the right skill for it. There's no excuse to not be a better screening team.
Yeah.
There's no excuse to not be a better, better communicating on defense. There's no excuse to not play screens better, play ball screens better. There's no excuse to not get into passing lanes. There's no excuse to not rotate. There's no excuse to not box out. I don't think they boxed out, but about 15% of the time tonight.
Yeah, they did not. Yeah, that's a good point. They're not a great box out team either.
They don't run sharp off. And now, again, Hubert called some sets, and I thought they got into the sets and did a decent job. But the problem is the screens don't work. So they would get in, they go through their options. If you ever watch a dummy practice in basketball, team will go through all of its options, and then they reset. And they did that a few times, but I thought that the cutters were cutting hard. I thought there was awareness. The heads were up. There were good, crisp passes. They were never in danger of turning it over, but the screens were bad or the cuts were bad. Guys didn't use the screens, and they got nothing out of it. It was just like running time off the clock.
Yeah.
So I said earlier this week this was going to be a very revealing week, and they go to Notre Dame Saturday, which is a must-win game. I think every game they play is a must-win game.
Yeah, at this point, I think
because
you're right.
They lost a quad one opportunity tonight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because Louisville on the road will remain a quad one game. And Carolina lost that opportunity, and there are a whole lot more. And the team that I've seen most of the time this year, you see them beating Duke?
No.
You see them beating Pitt?
I can't see him beating Notre Dame. I really can't.
Did you see him winning at Clemson? I mean, can you?
No.
I've got to check to see. We'll get into Notre Dame another time, but Notre Dame's got some dudes that can shoot. It's going to be on the road. It's going to be like 20 degrees outside, 15 degrees outside, which I know they're not playing outside, but sometimes it just kind of messes with you if you're not used to it. They're going to have to pick it up. North Carolina's 8-6. I asked RJ, I said, North Carolina's 8-6. What do you have to do to shift gears and be what this team's always supposed to be? And he basically said, buckle down. I mean, he said some decent stuff. I asked Ian as well, and Ian just said, we just got to we got to learn from mistakes and ball. But the mistakes are the same. Like, they didn't screen well against Elon.
Yeah, they're not getting better at their weaknesses. And a lot of the stuff that you've talked about, those weaknesses and things they're bad at that you just listed, not communicating on defense, not being a good screening team.
Fixable.
But it's very fixable stuff, but it's also extremely fundamental stuff. And I think that's the worrying part about the conversation we're having. It's like they're just not very fundamentally sound at these basic things of basketball that are the foundation. You talk about foundations all the time with teams. Yeah. If you don't have a strong foundation as a team, how do you expect to have a good season? And I think what we're seeing right now is when you're not fundamentally sound at these basic things that we've talked about, it shouldn't really be a surprise that this team is 2 games off 500 and could very easily be 8-7 on Saturday. I mean, I do not.
We got SMU coming in next week. Can they defend
this
SMU?
Team beat Notre Dame after what we saw tonight.
Can they defend SMU? SMU's pretty good.
Yeah, I don't see them winning.
If the NCAA tournament selection, if today was Selection Sunday, SMU would be in the field.
100%. Yeah, so it's concerning, man. But it's who they are. At this point.
It is, and I'll tell you. Let me throw a couple positives out there because I don't want people to think this is just a dumper thing here. I actually thought Hubert had a pretty decent offensive plan. They went inside the J-Wash right away. They went into him a few times early. They were getting it into Lubin. He was trying to make some moves down there. He did get a kick-out 3 to Ian at the top of Ian or Drake for a 3 at the top of the key. So, and I was saying the other day, you got to run it through the post. Even if they don't do anything with it, just run the ball through the freaking post some. And I thought that they did that at times. And when they did, they had some decent offense. So clearly Hubert is trying to get them to do that. I think part of the problem, and people want to dump all over Hubert, and I get the criticism, and I think criticism is justified in a lot of ways. But, man, the kids have got to be able to run when he says, too. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff wrong. And it's not so easy to say, well, just do what Roy does and put 5 new dudes in there. It's not going to work. Mm-hmm. It's not going to work with this group. They
got problems.
They got a lot to fix. And what's crazy is even though they didn't play that well, they were poor defensively, and I thought that they were just really, really unbecoming on offensively a lot of the game. And there were times where they were not matching Louisville's intensity during the game. It was a 1-point game with 3:49 left. Mm-hmm. They were in position to win. That's the thing. They didn't do a lot of great things against Florida. They were in position to win. Yeah. They didn't do a lot of great things, certainly in the first half against Kansas, and they were in position to win. Same thing with Michigan State. So they are a few of these fundamentals being dealt with and becoming positives away from winning these games. Mm-hmm. But as Ian said, look, there's 14. We're almost halfway through the season. They're 14 games in. They have 32 regular season games because they got the extra one when they played at Hawaii. So by the time they play SMU next week, they will be smack dab in the middle. And the thing is, the rest of it's ACC. So it's teams that know them. When the game was getting ready to start tonight, I'm like, this is okay. ACC plays here. This plays the buzz.
Yeah, it's
different. And they got to fix this stuff, and only they can do it. But I just think that there's I was talking with a few people in the media that cover Carolina. We were just sort of chewing the fat, so to speak, about this team, and just, boy, we're writing and saying the same things again.
Yeah.
It's a lot like the football team.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
It's writing and saying the same things, and it never really turned around with the football team. And there is nothing. There are no indicators to suggest this will turn around for basketball. It's just going to kind of be like this all year.
Agreed.
And if you look at the schedule, I think there's one game left that's probably a lock win, and that's Miami at home, because Miami is beyond pathetic.
Atrocious.
And I don't think at Virginia Tech is a lock.
No.
It should be, but it's probably not.
Especially on the road. I don't think the road games are a lock. I really don't.
No.
Not based on what we've seen so far. I mean, things can change, but I agree. I just think it's who this team is.
Their 2 good wins, they were down 16 and they were down 20. So
Yeah, I mean,
they barely led for any of those games. They led for 24 seconds tonight. When you read my inside the game, I'm adding it up each time they play a quality opponent. And this was another quad one games. What, their eighth one or whatever it is, the eighth quad one game. How much court time have they been in the lead? It's around 27 minutes in those 8 games.
it's a lot. It's just not very good, man.
So think about it. What's 8 times 4?
Mm-hmm.
It's 325 game minutes because Michigan State went overtime. They've led for about, is that right? Is that the right number? 8 times 4? Yeah.
So, yeah, 32. Yeah. 32, yeah.
So they've led for like 27 minutes out of 325 minutes.
It's just a little over a half. It's not good, man. It's not good. I mean,
So they're always playing in a stress situation.
mm-hmm.
They're always going uphill, like climbing uphill.
They're not in control.
And there's little rocks coming at them and stuff, And it's
they have no control in games now.
And they climb and climb and climb, and they deal with these rocks, and they look up, and like, man, the summit looks the same distance now as it did an hour ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're gonna do a quick separate drop. Stay tuned. It'll come out after this. We're gonna do a little separate drop. I think you can disagree with me on that. I think what we talk about in that, because we've talked a little bit about what this team's at, I think maybe we just focus more on the week ahead, like you talked about. You talked about before, this is a big week for North Carolina. I think we talk about why with these 2 games coming up based on what we saw tonight. I think that could be a quick little drop we could do. That could be pretty interesting because I'd like to talk about some more of this, but I don't want to go 45 minutes on this 3 things. It's already over 30. So
yeah, and we do this all the time. You know whose fault it is.
Yeah,
I talk forever.
But there's so many things you could talk about on this team too. We didn't do a podcast this week because you're on the road too. So this is kind of like its own basketball show right here.
Yeah, I drive to South Bend tomorrow.
Yeah. Have fun with that, man. I bet you can't wait to be up in South Bend right now.
South Bend in the low 20s, baby.
Woo. And on that note, we're going to get out of here. Like I said, we're going to do a separate drop. So this will come out first and the drop will come out sometime over the next couple of days. So stay tuned for that. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Other just for our 3 Things post-game podcast. Appreciate you guys watching as always. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell too. And appreciate you guys watching as always. And we'll see y'all next time. Thanks.